Nobody is getting fat on brown rice and sweet potatoes. Hey, everybody, I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. Because these are the topics. You see people who they blame certain foods for obesity, the obesity epidemic, all these problems. But people are losing sight of the fact of what actually causes these problems in our diet. Okay, it's not carbohydrates. It's not whatever people happen to blame things on. It's definitely not carbohydrates. And the reason for that, let's be quite frank. Humans do not store carbohydrates at an appreciable rate as body fat. We don't. This has been confirmed in the lab over and over and over. When people point out, oh yeah, but de novo lipogenesis goes up here and here, but I'm like, but it's not enough to make you fat. And in other words, you can't gain 2 pounds of body fat a month from carbohydrate overfeeding. Like, you can't eat enough carbs for that to happen. So that's a bit of a misnomer. It really is calorie surplus, and then that calorie surplus causing you to store dietary fat. So we need to be extremely clear. Almost every drop of fat on your body, like 99% of it, according to data, came from fat that you ate. The fat you eat is the fat you wear. Now, that doesn't mean you store fat without a calorie surplus, because that doesn't happen. And people will say, well, I eat a lower fattish diet, but I can still gain body fat. Well, yeah, because you're not eating an absurdly low fat diet. You're still eating enough fat to where if you stored all of it, or most of it, because you're still eating a big calorie surplus, then yes, you're going to gain appreciable amounts of fat. Okay? So that's the problem with this. But when we start looking into certain foods and we realize that, the fat we eat is the fat we wear, and saturated fat stores most efficiently, mono the second, and then polyunsaturated fats store less efficiently. But it doesn't mean they don't store. So we need to be clear here that you can absolutely gain a lot of body fat from polyunsaturated fats in large amounts. So we need to be clear on that. And a lot of processed carbohydrates make it easier for you to overeat. They can negatively affect insulin sensitivity, but so do saturated fats. Saturated fats also impact insulin sensitivity quite negatively. And there is where we run into all the problems, because this is how we create a cascade of problems. So if you're eating too much saturated fat, or you're eating too many refined carbohydrates, particularly refined fructose or refined sugars, fructose from fruit doesn't cause this to anywhere near the same degree. It would be very difficult to create this from fruit. It's hypothetically possible, but you would really have to try. What I mean, maybe eating 3,000 plus calories of fruit, or more, 4,000 calories of fruit every day. Okay, all right, that could, for someone who's not absurdly active, create some issues. But by and large, it really is the refined sugars. It is saturated fat, and then just too many refined fats in general. This is what creates the obesity problem, because we get, again, calorie excess from this. Yeah, we get calorie excess from this, particularly in a very storable form, because what most people think of is high sugar foods usually have a lot of fat added also. Okay, so again, we need to be clear. This is how we are biologically gaining body fat. Now, how do we get to that surplus? Comes from the hyperpalatability and calorie density of the food. So in other words, if you eat foods that don't satiate you, it's easier to overeat, right? Foods that if you eat them, you get hungry again sooner, that's a problem, okay? But that comes over to the highly refined stuff, maybe too many sugars, okay? Too many sugars and unrefined sugars, again, causing a little bit quicker of a clearance, faster digestion, faster absorption, not as much food volume. Definitely happens when fat goes up. So a lot of things like that, though, but with a lot of the taste response, that causes us to stimulate appetite, right? Can stimulate appetite, not necessarily make us full for the amount of food we eat. You add a lot of calorie density to that in the form of fats first. Fats are always going to be the most calorie dense, okay? And if it's low fiber fats, even worse. Than like refined sugars behind that in terms of calorie density. So that physically allows us to overeat excess calories and then have a lot of fat in the diet on top of it to store. But then those food compositions, they affect appetite and food response over time because, again, they affect leptin, ghrelin, they affect insulin sensitivity, insulin resistance, again, so low insulin sensitivity, tends to oftentimes then be associated with higher appetite. All right, what then happens if we eat hyper-palatable foods that taste really, really good all the time? And I'm not saying your food shouldn't taste good, but there's hyper-palatability is when you combine large amounts of fatty with salty or fatty with sweet. And I think most people understand that. In other words, it's very easy to overeat ice cream, pies, cakes. Why? What those are? They're fatty and sweet. Those are all really high-fat foods that have a bunch of sugar and sweet taste. Okay, it hits those taste receptors in your tongue and in your mouth and everything, because fat is one of them. All right, very easy to overeat. How about salty and fatty? The same thing. Salt makes us hungrier and thirstier. You combine that with a lot of fat, so a pizza, French fries, but it could be beef jerky or something too. It's easy to overeat beef jerky, actually. So just giving you some examples. All right, those are going to make you hungry. Right, they stimulate appetite. They're easy to eat large amounts of because we're hitting those. And again, I'm not saying food shouldn't taste good, but that is hyperpalatability. They taste excessively good, and but again, excessively good relative to their calorie load and calorie density. So this causes us to take in too much energy too easily. All right, this causes body fat gain pretty consistently. All right, so then when I say something like brown rice and sweet potatoes, or even potatoes in general, all right, what's going on with those foods? They're both very satiating. They both fill you up. They both have a lot of food volume. They're very low in fat. They're both slow digesting. Okay, so these sort of staple foods people think of as staple clean bodybuilder foods, they work for a reason, right? They're very low in fat, they have fiber, they have a fair amount of food volume, they fill you up, but they can still taste good. But even then, I take it a step further, it's kind of hard to do this even on white rice. Brown rice might be a hair better there, but white rice isn't even associated with obesity at a epidemiology level. Okay? It is just very hard to get fat on these foods. I mean, watermelon's another example. It's almost impossible to overeat watermelon. People aren't getting fat from these foods. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.